Welcome to this interview with RJ Pittman, CEO of Matterport. Now, this is one of a number of interviews that I'm going to do here on Asymmetric Investing. So if you want more content like this, please subscribe to this channel. It really helps out and spread the word. What I'm trying to do with these interviews is give more context about the way that management thinks about companies. A lot of the conference calls where investors get access to management really funnels through Wall Street analysts, and they're asking questions that are helping them try to build financial models. But what I want to do is understand how a business works, what the strategy is, and how this is going to be an investment that could potentially 10x over time. Because asymmetric investing is about investing in companies with 10x potential over the next 10 years. Matterport is one of the companies that I've covered on asymmetric investing, and for good reason. Right now, it has about a $600 million market cap, about $400 million in cash on the balance sheet. That means investors are only valuing the core company at about $200 million. And as the company's financials improve, revenue gets better, losses start to turn to profits. This has the possibility for being an asymmetric return for investors. So that's the context with which I wanted to do this interview and have this conversation with RJ Pittman. We got into a lot of different things, starting with the technology of the company, the strategy, the financials, and then there's a question at the end about stock-based compensation, which I know comes up a lot with a company like Matterport. So hopefully this gives a little bit more context to Matterport's business, how RJ and the management team thinks about the business and what the potential is long-term. Thanks so much for watching, and now on with the interview. All right, today's interview is with Matterport CEO RJ Pittman. RJ, thank you so much for joining me. I want to start this off right away with a little bit of background about you. You have a long history in technology, now the CEO of Matterport, obviously, but how did you end up there? Give me the kind of high level overview of what you've spent the last few years or decades doing in the tech space.
Sure. Well, I've been at it for a while. At first as an entrepreneur for about 15 years, started a handful of companies across the gamut, from an online brokerage, an e-commerce platform, a payments platform, advanced search engine technology company, that ultimately led me to a very interesting front row seat to some great formative big tech companies along the way as well, including Google and Apple, even eBay, through a very exciting and transformative period of time for eBay as well. I would say that the driving force for me in all of those cases is how we can use technology to make a big impact on society and industry, maybe even humanity. It's always been the driving force, even in my junior high and high school days. I knew this was the path that I was going to set out on. And I found in the early days that you could shape a lot of that through your own ideas and the companies that you build. I later realized that there was an opportunity to be quite disruptive at scale if you could use the platforms of the likes of a Google or an Apple to drive change at a much larger magnitude of scale and speed, really, for that matter. What can we do in this lifetime that's going to maybe change the course of history? From that perspective, I became quite convinced that you can use these scale platforms to do pretty transformational things.
And so that leads you to something like a SaaS model like Matterport, which can suddenly be in the hands of a billion people potentially if it gets adopted.
Well, exactly. And I will tell you, one of the things that attracted me to Matterport, it was after I'd come off a great run at eBay. And one of the things in the eBay marketplace that always fascinated me is the category of real estate. Like, who knew you could buy a house, a modular home, a mobile home, even land in the eBay marketplace today? I always wondered why there wasn't more of that. And could we make a digital free marketplace for property and real estate? I still believe that. But nevertheless, I knew that in one of my next pursuits, I've been very passionately involved in real estate and design build projects as long as I've been in technology. The house I live in here in San Francisco, I designed and built on an old PowerBook back in the 90s, before all of this great technology wave really got started. And I've been doing that kind of stuff ever since. And just personally speaking, Matterport was at the intersection of two great loves of mine: architecture, design, real estate, properties, physical properties, and technology. But most interestingly about Matterport, and what drew me to it 5 years ago, is the spatial data library that the company was building, right? We have all these great virtual tours. If you've been on Zillow or Realtor.com or Redfin here in the States, or any of the big platforms in Europe and around the world, you have experienced a Matterport digital twin. You've been in a dimensionally accurate, photorealistic 3D tour of a property. We're the leading player in this space. It's super exciting. It is changing the industry. But I think the most exciting part is this data platform. And the data platform represents today over 38 billion square feet of space that we've digitized in over 178 countries. Wasn't quite that big when I joined, to say the least, but boy, did it have a lot of promise. And to your point, could we turn Matterport from the camera and the capture company and the virtual tour company into a data platform business that's loaded with potential property insights and property intelligence that we could be offering to all of these property owners and managers as a SaaS subscription business? Much more like a business intelligence platform for properties than a capture company working in 3D that you might know us most for today.
So that's kind of the journey that I want to go through, because I did my first Matterport, I think it was 2018. And it was just somebody that we knew. I'd started a business actually in virtual reality. And so it was kind of, oh, this is similar technology you can use. At the time, there was those cardboard Google goggles
Yep,
that you could
sure.
actually go into a Matterport. And at that time, it was, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I can sort of see the vision. And it seems like between 2018 and 2022 was a lot of like, here's the vision. Now we've got to do a bunch of work in the background before this becomes a real business. It was a business,
Yeah,
but kind of takes that. You have to eventually reach some sort of escape velocity.
that's
And
right.
what has intrigued me and what sort of brought on this conversation was, it seems like in the last couple of quarters, things like your revenue growth rate, your net retention rate, there's some interesting product developments that have come out that tie into the data that you're talking about related to artificial intelligence. It seems like we're reaching some sort of tipping point. So that's hopefully where I want to get to. But I want to start with the technology piece,
Sure.
because that's one of the things that I've kind of in my mind gone back and forth on how sustainable that is. In 2018, it was this custom camera. Then I think it was about 2020, you came out with the ability to do a Matterport with an iPhone or with an Android phone. At the same time, they added things like LiDAR, which potentially could commoditize something like Matterport, like if we talk about risks and opportunities. And so I'm kind of have these things in my head. Now you're at the point where, yes, you can do a Matterport with your phone, but you're also selling this Pro 3 device. Help me understand the technology journey and what you're capturing today and what you can do with that isn't necessarily just something anyone can do with an iPhone, because I think there's analogies in like the camera space, right? People are spending thousands of dollars on cameras, even though you have a camera in your pocket.
Yeah. I'd say one of the most unique things about Matterport's technology, I would also say that's the most challenging feat to overcome if you want to be a player in this space doing what Matterport does. Buildings are very unique. They're as individualized as human DNA. There's really no two buildings that are the same. The layouts, the designs, the volume, the architecture, commercial properties, industrial, residential, high rises, hotels, so vastly different. And for a company like Matterport to exist, much less be successful and get to scale, you can't have a technology that does a great job of creating, let's say, a 3D model or picture of the room you're sitting in and just that room. You have to be able to build a technology that is really, really good, if not great, in any setting, any building, any space that you drop it in. It has to deliver the consistent dimensional accuracy, the photorealism. And if that building is a 10-story high rise, how does your software connect the stairwells, the elevator shafts, and all the stories and rebuild it back from the imagery you capture on site into a architecturally precise digital replica of the physical space? It's actually never been done before in a pure automated fashion. The way it's done with LiDAR cameras and field technicians is you capture a bunch of data, point clouds, usually this pixelated data or mesh data, 3D mesh data. It's not photorealistic, but it's highly precise dimensionally. And it's slices and bits and pieces of a building or a space, which building engineers, CAD drafters, and architects will then take back and hand reassemble to the best of their ability, what each of those pieces, where they all go like a puzzle to give you that 3D model. Matterport's case is all done in AI, right? we've been at this for 12 years now, and we have an engine called Cortex, which was an essential innovation and breakthrough that allows us to create these 3D models automatically using a deep learning neural network that's been trained on loads of data. And now it learns and trains on all of the data we've captured over the years. We have such an enormous training data library, 38 billion square feet of every kind of building out there. This automated 3D reconstruction is getting very, very accurate, very precise. And the reason we were able to turn this over to a smartphone or a little 360 camera, kind of like GoPro action cameras, and turn that into the same dimensionally accurate, full 3D photorealistic model is that we train the AI to predict 3D geometry and predict how to assemble things together from an even harder source of data, more difficult or limited, which is 2D flat photos off your phone. Once again, you could have a LiDAR sensor on a phone, which they have today, and we fully support it with Apple. You can have LiDAR cameras and such, but that isn't the hard part. The hard part is full building assembly or full campus assembly if you have multiple buildings scattered across a university or a corporate campus. How do you figure all of that out in software to recreate it exactly as it exists in the physical world? And again, it takes a lot of data and a lot of training and a lot of science all combined together to make that possible. So it'd be very difficult for somebody, even with a breakthrough AI capability or a breakthrough capability in a new phone, an iPhone 20 or something, to be able to imagine just walking into a 300,000 square foot factory and being able to create a perfect digital twin of it, potentially even in this lifetime. There's just so much that goes into it that it's why we tend to be not only an industry leader in the space, but we're really the only ones that can do this. And it's given us a great advantage to be able to benefit from the power of AI to just do this in an automated, super cost-effective way.
And is that kind of the answer? I put out a call for questions on Twitter, and somebody asked about Gaussian splatting, if I'm saying this correctly. This is technology beyond me, and nerfs. And I think this is one of those things where when you see a video of these things, as I look them up, you go like, oh, that seems like it could be disruptive to somebody like Matterport. But I think if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, is this is the kind of stuff that you're doing and it's like you're going from hobby to now we've got to make this a professional tool, and you have to take that not just to the next level, but to like an order of magnitude or two better. Is that sort of the way to think about it?
Yes. And let me give you two responses to that. First, Gaussian splats and nerfs. There are so many fantastic innovations on the frontier of computer vision, artificial intelligence. Those are two very promising advancements in just the last few years. And what you've probably seen if anybody has gone to YouTube and just searched for one of those and looked for a demo, you could see somebody basically walking through a house or a property in 3D achieved through a Gaussian splat or a NERF model. And it's very, very good when you're on the path that camera walked through to basically get all of the imaging. You veer away from it, try to move to the corner of the room or come at it from another angle that perhaps you didn't walk from when you scan the space. And suddenly the magic of the 3D degrades. More than all of that, the question of dimensional accuracy is probably the biggest one. Like, you can get this great model, but does it really know the dimensions with enough precision to where this would be commercially viable? Mm-hmm. So that's step one. There's super promising early days. It will work in small spaces and in limited experiences, but very cool. But in the same way that we are not that overly confident, we're not that naive to think that, it won't have a disruptive effect on Matterport. The same view I took moments after I joined the company and we were powered only by the Matterport cameras, right? And this was at the time the Pro 2 camera, $3,500 capture device. It's the only way you could get a great Matterport digital twin. And now we have the Pro 3, which is a $6,000 LiDAR-based superpower capture device. But what I saw was the potential to be disrupted by smartphone capture or a 360 or consumer type of camera that might be able to get not as good as Matterport, but good enough, right? To be a low-cost alternative that people might be just as happy with. So rather than just shoo that away, we leaned into it and said, the best way to prevent yourself from being disrupted in a category like this is to disrupt yourself. And so that was at a time when 70% of our revenue was coming from camera sales. And I went out there and said, we're going to make it available with the smartphone in your pocket. You don't need to buy a camera from Matterport, and the subscription tier is going to be free to get you started. So everybody thought like either RJ's lost his mind, there goes Matterport, a perfectly good company with a great product and solution, or there just might be something to the madness, right? And what happened when we launched that? Two very interesting things. The obvious one happened. We launched this in May of 2020, about a year ahead of schedule. It wasn't even ready. It was a rough beta. And it was when COVID broke. And we wanted to get a solution in the hands of realtors and brokers and agents to be able to keep the real estate industry moving forward with virtual open houses for a much bigger audience, because they weren't allowed to go into buildings and properties at that time. We were all locked down. In 3 days, we generated more subscribers on the platform than we did in the first 8 years of the company. No surprise, right? We made 3D capture accessible, democratized to anybody who had a phone. The other thing that happened is over the course of the next 2 years, we sold more of our Pro 2 cameras at $3,500 than we ever had in the history of the company. Why did that happen? Well, that was a very intentional product segmentation strategy, one that I borrowed from my time at Apple. And at the time at Apple, we had all these different versions of iPhones, iPads, and Macs and laptops for a reason, right? So that you can hit and meet your customers where they are at different price bands and different performance capabilities of your offering. And we just expanded our market. We didn't cannibalize it at all. And that created an awareness of Matterport and a halo that drove our camera sales, drove the entire ecosystem up, right? And that was the plan all along, is to say, we will be capture device agnostic.
You brought up artificial intelligence, and this is one of the interesting things. As I think about AI, obviously this is the talk of the stock market, but I think what we haven't landed on from an AI space is like what's actually sustainable long term. Sure, NVIDIA is selling a ton of chips, but what are we actually going to be using this for and paying for in 5, 10, 15 years? And when you introduced some of the property intelligence tools, and you, I believe, teased a few earlier than that, where you could actually just put in a prompt and build out a space, those were the kind of things that were very aha for me. Anybody watching who has rented a commercial real estate space, part of the process is you go tour it, you bring your architect with you, they bring a tape measure, or maybe, one of those dimensional laser things.
Laser measuring device, yep.
Yeah, they bring their rough sketches back to the office. Somebody, whether it's you or the property owner, pays them $1,000, $1,500, whatever it is, to sketch out, hey, this is what this space might look like. And what you introduced with one of those was just, you could literally do a Matterport with your phone, I believe, type into the prompt, hey, build this out as a restaurant. What does this look like as a gym? What does this look like as cubicle space? And almost like on site in real time, you could do that. Tell me a little bit about the artificial intelligence tools and vision, because it seems like we're so early in that growth of that space and the application that you're building for Matterport that some of these tools seem really useful, but I'm wondering what you're actually seeing the customers use, and then what's actually finding adoption, because I don't know if those are necessarily the same things as we all kind of throw spaghetti at the wall from an AI space.
Well, and that's what happens, right? Whether it's the internet 1.0 or web 2.0, AI, big data, think of all the big trends and crazes that we've all, lived through and led through over the last few decades. We're in the middle of, I'd say, the biggest one, with the tipping point of capability that AI has reached. It is pretty extraordinary. I think it's legit, and it is absolutely here to stay. To your point, though, who's building durable solutions for the long term? And for Matterport, as mentioned, like long before we got into this wave of AI, our whole company wouldn't exist without it, right? 12 years ago, building Cortex, the engine I described, our philosophy on AI, let's call it old, recent, and then new, is based on one common thread, which is automation. If we can use AI to automate things that are otherwise tedious, error-prone, expensive, time-consuming, with a software alternative that is faster, cheaper, scalable, and with great precision, That's going to be a value proposition that translates directly to the customer, not just making our business more efficient to run, but it's going to give huge long-term value to whether it's a real estate agent or a facilities manager in a factory or a hotel owner. That's been our approach to AI, and I think it works really well. It's the guiding principle that allows all of these customers to say, well, okay, I get my digital twin from Matterport. That's great. But now I want the software to analyze that property for me. So with a digital twin and today's AI capability, I can generate an entire listing that could go on MLS just from all of the data that's in the digital twin. I could even generate the property description room by room. I can tell you the exact square footage of the primary suite, the living room, the ceiling heights in the dining room.
So it's not
And
somebody just guessing at what the square footage of the house is, which is the way it works today.
I can tell you if the bay windows are south facing, east facing, where's the sunlight coming in from, all from the digital twin. And then I can tell a story about it. You feed it to any large language model. It is unbelievable what you get back when you feed Matterport data to an LLM just off the shelf without any tuning of an LLM. It's extraordinary. And we literally create a 2D floor plan. We create a full property report with the kind of insights about a property that a lot of seasoned agents would miss in preparing a house to go to market. If you can do all of this in software in one button and then give that to the agent, give it to all the potential buyers, and of course to the seller as well, you have a chance to dramatically reshape the efficiency of the real estate marketplace as we know it. And that's what this is all about. And the great thing about this from an efficiency point of view for Matterport, we talk about profitable investments, Matterport's path to profitability. These are all software add-ons to the heavy lift of creating the digital twin and getting you on our platform. The extensions into property intelligence and AI-driven insights like I just described are very capital efficient. It's all cloud-based, post-processed, low compute overhead. This is like 90% margin efficiency for us. And from a business point of view, here's the most exciting part. Our customers come for the digital twin. And now it's Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 companies like John Deere and McDonald's, Home Depot, et cetera, where they're digitizing thousands of spaces and tens of millions of square feet. They are coming for the digital twin, but staying for the insights and the property analysis, not across just one single property, but across a fleet of thousands of properties at a time. And the value of that analysis, that our software can go cover 1,000 locations in 5 seconds, replacing the manual process of human labor going and traveling and the logistics of actually just collecting the information to begin the insights and analytics process, is like 100-to-1 efficiency gain. And so they'll actually pay more for the insights and the business intelligence around their physical properties than the digital twin itself. And it's cost us the least to produce the insights because we're using the power of the data and using the power of AI. So for us, this is a very intentional strategy just to create more efficiency and hence real long-term profitability for the company.
So that transitions nicely into the business model. And it seems like on the outside, again, I've kind of gone back and forth on, I think early in your days as a public company, after this SPAC deal, you had made some investments in some companies who were doing development. It seemed like Matterport could almost be like a platform to build on top of, which, I mean, that excited me from a theoretical standpoint, because you do something like, I want to get my electrical panel replaced in my basement. Why can't I just send a Matterport to 3 electricians and have them do a bid without having them come over to my house and pressure sell and stuff like that? But that seems to be a really, really heavy lift to build that. And one of the other things that we knew that you were working on, but seems to have really gained more traction, is in so you break it down into promote and facilities management now. And it seems, am I interpreting it right, that you've kind of funneled down the ideas into, hey, these are the 2 areas where we see the value. Here's exactly what the product development plan looks like. Here's what the sales cycle looks like, who our target market is. And it just allows you to focus more as a company. Is that kind of the right way to think about it? And then I want to dig into those 2 segments individually.
Sure. From the get-go, Matterport has been an open platform. And as I described earlier, from a technology point of view, for this thing to work and for us to really get the benefits of automation and automatic 3D reconstruction and 3D digital twin creation, it's got to be great in every building and every physical environment. Okay, now it is. And so be careful what you wish for, because we have customers taking Matterport into all kinds of crazy places, subways to museums, Egyptian tombs that were discovered by archaeologists that no humans have ever seen in thousands of years. Like, it's unbelievably cool. Are we going to go build a business around those and put a sales team against it and go get all the tombs and all the museums and things? Museums are especially great. Historic landmarks are fantastic. It helps make the world a smaller place, makes all of these great parts of humanity accessible to everyone. But we're going to let the world do a bit of that. That's the beauty of being a platform, is I don't have to chase every one of those and try to turn it into a revenue stream or a profit stream. Our open horizontal subscription tiers, et cetera, take care of a lot of what we call the long tail of properties. We are indeed focused on the two areas that are the most developed, meeting us where we are today, see the benefit of Matterport's value proposition, and can ramp up and get on the platform very, very quickly. So the first one is promote, as you described, which is property marketing. And that's property marketing across homes and homes for sale, homes for rent, apartments, hotels, nightly rentals, Airbnbs, Vacasas. We power all of them. And as it turns out, property marketing as a value proposition is exactly the same feature and functionality and strategy and go-to-market, whether it's a hotel, whether it's a commercial piece of real estate, an office for rent, et cetera, or a home. And so we are able to do an extraordinarily efficient job of building that market and getting all of that property, which in the promote category, that's 2/3 of the built world, is looking back at us both as residential real estate, rental real estate, et cetera, where promote is so important, right? So that's like 200 trillion of the $300 trillion asset class of real property. The other side of it is operating the property. So beyond the promotion and creating demand and utilization of a space, once you have facilities in full use, how do you optimize them to get the maximum efficiency out of that operation? So facilities management, construction management, so projects that are being built or remodeled or repurposed and reimagined, as you were describing, like how does this look as a restaurant or an office or something else? We play so well in that space because we can streamline the analysis and the imagination and the optimization of the use of any space. And it turns out that if you look at the enterprise business, the larger the enterprise, all the way up to the Fortune 100, and the larger the footprint of physical space they have, the more acute the problem is and the more acute the need is for them for something like what we offer. And we're really the only ones out there offering this one-click, fully automated property analysis solution.
Because they don't necessarily know exactly what's in each facility and what assets are there. And does each, I think we had talked about Subway at one point. How many ovens are there in an average Subway? It seems like the problems are unique, but the fact that you're building the platform and then customers can plug into and say, you're offering 10 features, I get value out of 3 of them, but it's going to be 3 different features for each customer.
That's right. And, a couple of those that you named, whether it's a Subway or Home Depot or Whole Foods or CVS, Walgreens, Chick-fil-A, they're all using Matterport. And they're all using because they have huge real estate footprints to manage. It's costly to do it in the analog fashion, as we described. Once you digitize, then you basically turn those buildings into data, and I can algorithmically analyze. I can do all of that asset management. I can go count all of the fire extinguishers and sprinkler heads in every retail location. I can tell you where they are to make sure that there is a sufficient number of sprinkler heads per square foot to meet local codes and ordinances without ever having to set foot in a store to go measure it the hard way.
That seems like one of those things that Matterport, since you have the data, those capabilities just keep stacking on each other.
That's
like
right.
I said, the first Matterport I did was 2018. There's no way that information could have been pulled from those images, but over time you keep adding these features, and suddenly your market potential expands as a result. Is that kind of the right way to think about it? If I'm an investor and I'm looking for asymmetric opportunities, it seems like eventually you build some sort of moat that at the core, the foundation is that you have more data than everybody else, and then you just add capabilities that sort of create a moat around the business.
You've hit it right on the head. And it's taken us a decade to get to just about 40 billion square feet of space under management, which, if you put that in perspective, you take all of the largest commercial real estate companies in the world, JLL, Cushman Wakefield, CBRE, a few others, add them all up, and that's about half the amount of square footage that Matterport has under management. And we're adding upwards of about 10 billion square feet of space a year. I mean, it's the growth of our rate of digitization is just off the charts. And I don't think everybody has fully wrapped their heads around that. And there's just no other spatial data library of the built world anywhere close to this size, much less growing at this extraordinary rate. We'll be over 100 billion soon. And we have our eye on 1 trillion square feet under management. And it's very, very achievable in the next 5 years because you can capture a space now with every kind of device, including a smartphone. And there's 5 billion smartphones active in the world today that are Matterport compatible, right? So that gives us that great advantage, number one, on reach and the footprint. But then exactly to your point, all of these innovations that I'm releasing to our customers today, like property intelligence for homes, where it goes in and can tell you the whole story about a property automatically, all the dimensions and all this great stuff, I can run that intelligence on a Matterport scan that we did in 2015 and extract all of these wonderful insights from it. It doesn't matter when you scanned it. It doesn't matter what device you captured it from, in what period of time. You have a new lease on life for that digital twin or that particular property. If you've kept your Matterport around long enough, suddenly this becomes a way not just for realtors to get the best marketing they can for a buyer and a seller out of Matterport, but it's also for the homeowner now, because now you have this digital system of record. And as we keep giving you all of this intelligence and all these insights, this is better than an appraisal. This is better than your architect's old 2D plans, if you could even find them on the property. These are precision 3D blueprints. You can use them, as you said, to start a remodel. You can share them with building architects, insurance companies, mortgage brokers. And eventually our vision is this replaces the system of record for properties, commercial or residential, because it's far more precise and contextual than an appraisal ever will be. And it's quite interesting.
It seems like to me that some of these companies should be pushing these kinds of things. I just think insurance is such a natural thing where I have insurance for this house. Like, nobody's ever set foot in this house. They're just going on whatever the information was in the sale documents and whatever I say is here. But it would make more sense. Your appraisal would be more accurate. If something happened, what is being covered would be more accurate. If you just were like, hey, as part of this process, do a Matterport twice a year and we'll keep things up to date on the back end. So that gets to, from an adoption standpoint, how does that work? Because there's so many areas where, to me, it seems obvious that this is a value add and a tool, but so many of the markets that you're in are old, stodgy markets that just move so slow. We're recording this a couple of hours after the National Association of Realtors news came out, so I haven't even had time to process that. But that's a place where it seems like a Matterport would be really logical. If you're trying to sell a house, why wouldn't I provide buyers with more information before they even set foot in the door? But that's not a standard to have that available. It is available in some places, but is it because most of your sales channel goes through individual brokers? Or what does that kind of look like on a go-to-market strategy, if you will? Because that seems like kind of a sticking point, is just the markets that you're going into should be really valuable, but also really hard to get them to change in any way.
Yeah. Today we have one of our fastest growing categories is the insurance category. It was born out of the restoration side. So when something happens to a property, you have a fire or a flood, and these building restoration companies that are all contracted by the big insurance companies, the ServPros, ServiceMaster, Belfours of the world, Paul Davis, like great, all customers of Matterport. And they're armed with Matterport cameras, and they're on the scene when there's a hurricane and all the roofs have blown off a neighborhood in Florida, or you name it. And it's to be able to do very quick and precise damage assessment, claims adjustment process just gets totally transformed. Take all the cost and time and inaccuracy out of those estimates, saving the insurance companies tons of money in overpaying, but also just the speed of the whole process goes up like 10x. And those are, the industries move sort of slow, but that isn't actually the problem. It's just such a massive category in industry. It takes a long time to penetrate your way all the way through. And it's not because of competition or bidding wars to get in or win the account. It's just the vastness of what we're going after. I'd say the other part of adoption that's important for everybody to understand here is that the more and more we get compared to a SaaS company, because now 60% of our revenue in Matterport is coming from SaaS. Remember I said when I joined, 70% was hardware and camera sales. We're going to go all the way to 80, 90% of revenue will ultimately be coming from recurring revenue in SaaS and subscription, and not from hardware, because we're going to be hardware agnostic. But you do have to do a capture to get started. So you can't really give us full rule of 40 comparison, because we're not a Salesforce or a Slack where you just download the software to your machine and go, and you're in business and you're getting the benefits of that subscription right away. You have to do one more step. And whether it involves acquiring a camera to do it, hiring a service provider to do it, or you download our software and go do a scan yourself, that is a non-zero step. Now, we've taken that friction from like an enormous barrier to super scale, not a barrier to entry, but just to getting that flywheel going. And as you saw, we launched smartphone capture. We go from 13,000 subscribers to 1 million, right? So we know we can go from 1 million to 5 million to 10 million on the platform now. That's the kind of scalability we need, that mortgage companies, insurance companies, and some of these bigger players want to see, so that there's truly an easy, foolproof way to do that scan once or twice a year. And you push it out to what we say the edge of the network, so that they're not sending 50,000 building inspectors out there to do it themselves. It just doesn't scale. Gee, if you could get the homeowners or the property manager, if you're managing an office building or whatever it is, to do it, does that solve the scale problem? One, but two, if the insurance companies or mortgage companies are willing to give you an incentive, right? A discount on your insurance, a quarter point savings on your mortgage rate, if you put a digital twin on file, because it's way more demystifying than an appraisal for them. So it de-risks the paper that they're writing for the underlying asset.
Right.
That's all coming. And it's not a question of product market fit anymore, right? It's these mechanics of unlocking ease of capture and ultimately that ease of adoption that could really make this widespread in the way you're thinking.
We don't have much time left. I want to touch on financials really quickly, because I mentioned earlier, the thing that popped out to me over the last couple of quarters is the net retention rate went from declining to stepping up. That was really noticeable. And at the same time, you have both an increase in subscribers and a pretty sharp increase in sequential revenue growth. What exactly is happening there, and what should we look for in the future for that to continue? Or what sort of metrics should we be looking at to say, okay, this is working, as a point of evidence that the business model and the technology is taking hold?
So first of all, you're right to call out NDR. And mind you, this is in the last 2 years where the real estate industry, which is only part of what we serve, now we're big in the enterprise as well. So we're not as inextricably tied to the ebbs and flows of real estate. We're not a brokerage. We don't make money on the commissions of sales of properties. We're a listing component. So as long as there are listings for properties, even in down markets, there's a need for Matterport. And maybe in down markets, there's a more desperate need, because it's harder to sell properties in 22 and 23 than it's been in 40 years. And so, first of all, here's an industry in decline 20% a year for the last 2 years, and Matterport's growing 14% in the residential real estate category. So great sign there. And we're pushing NDR up to the highest levels it's been in 2 years in a down market as well. Total NDR 109%. And there is more to come. And why is there more to come? Quite simply is value-based pricing. So everything we just talked about, come for the digital twin, stay for the property intelligence, the insights, the analysis, the automation, the real value of how you can do more with your property, and for sure with your digital twin, is where people are investing. And we're putting all of that capability in, not for free, but we move you up the chain. That's in our premium subscription tiers, Our pricing overall goes up if we're going to put things in across the board for everybody to use. And we're very careful with our customers to bring them into that process. They actually have a say in some of our pricing changes. We don't hit them over the head with it. It always has to accompany a huge value contribution to the customer if we're going to do any price changes at all, which is not what a lot of other companies do, but it's an important philosophy for us. And look, we're at an advantage because I got a backlog of major high ROI money saving features, property selling features, et cetera,
Mhm.
that our customers are asking for and that are willing to pay a premium for. And so we're building those and bringing them to market and just stacking on top of our NDR momentum. So this is going to be great for our existing customers. But the other thing it does is makes our product so much more attractive to the rest of the markets that haven't even leaned in and begun with Matterport yet, that it becomes a tipping point for new customer adoption, which, by the way, we're also seeing huge acceleration in a tough year, 30+% growth in spaces digitized, square footage captured, like everything is accelerating. And when we see these markets return to form, especially with real estate, that's just going to be tailwind that pushes our acceleration up even faster.
Final one, you've talked about being operating, I believe, operating cash flow positive by the end of this year. I just want to ask about particularly operating expense management. And then the big line item for you guys, and you're not alone, especially in Silicon Valley, is stock-based compensation. So how do those two things be contained or not grow as you grow the business so that you can actually get to profitability and a more sustainable point from a financial perspective?
Yeah. So the first one, cash flow positive, cash flow break even from operations, super important to us. That's the true yardstick of operational efficiency inside the company, right? Can we now deliver all of our value and scale this business and make money at the same time? Of course. But many people may not realize this, but for many quarters in a row leading up to going public, we were cash flow break even from operations.
I did see that, yeah.
We did not tap into any of the capital that we raised in our last round as a private company. We just added that to the coffers. And we intentionally went cash negative to invest in scaling the business. And that's what we've been doing for the last 2.5 years as a public company, which is not that long. And we're really only a 500 person company, like less than 500, to be honest. It is extraordinary what we're able to do with such a small company, and it's getting even more capital efficient. And so that's all about cost containment and getting the leverage, again, out of all of our software derivative value propositions that are driving all the revenue growth. So this is all profitable growth from here for us internally. We've right-sized the company and made all of those hard decisions so that there's actual line of sight to break even, not, oh, we think we can get there if the winds line up and all these other existential things that you hear from other companies. Like, it's there. We've been there before. We know how to run this business profitably. It just comes at an attenuation to how fast you want to grow, because you'll be putting way more money to work to drive more demand and drive more revenue, but it doesn't all arrive in the quarter or in the fiscal year. And so I have to set a new expectation with Wall Street once we get to that path to profitability. Let me answer quickly for you on stock-based compensation. We're actually running very efficiently from that perspective. There is an overhang in our stock-based compensation from the point that we went public. We had some stock grants that were tied to management incentive plan, which was tied to the agreement with our investors that we worked with to go public. And what happened during that period, there was so much euphoria, as you all will remember, 21. And Matterport stock just got
for a while.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And thanks to Zuckerberg and Meta, people were telling us we should change the name of the company to Matterverse or, Port. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. And so, it was just very, very bad timing how it pushed the stock price very temporarily up to 30, 35 bucks a share. And it created a stock-based compensation moment that was just not even realistic, right? So it was this huge number that effectively rolls off of the whole financial model and table, I think at the end of 25 or somewhere even in the middle of 25. I'm not exactly sure, but it's right in that window. And it isn't reflective of this is the SBC that we run on a regular basis to sustain our employees and keep everybody incented and motivated. It's actually about 1/10 of that. And so
Okay.
if investors and people listening actually click in and take a closer look at the filings and understand that and look at what our incremental SBC has been over even just the last 2 years, it drops into the normal rate that tells us and tells everybody that then your path to full EPS positive is also well within reach. By the time we get to cash flow break even, and then we move to full EPS profitability and positive EPS, we're going to be coming out of that go public wave of stock-based compensation as well that allows that all to happen very nicely.
Thank you for the clarity on that. I really appreciate getting to know more about the technology, the business model, and I'll obviously keep watching the financials. This is a stock I've covered on YouTube, but also Asymmetric Investing. There's a deep dive there as well, and I'm a shareholder. So I think I actually bought shares when the SPAC was announced. So that was how excited I was about
All
the
right. I love
technology.
it.
I love seeing the clarity on the business model too. That's really helpful. So thank you, RJ, and looking forward to hearing more from Matterport in the future.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here.